Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about my day one update to my former Caustic Arrow, now Scourge Arrow, Poison Ballista Pathfinder. So my league basically started out exactly as expected. I first went Caustic Arrow, then once I had the currency, I went for Caustic Arrow of Poison, and then it was basically smooth sailing. And at some point, as I already talked about in my last video though, I started testing out some of the new bow skills. And one of them happened to be Scourge Arrow of Menace. And this name is very fitting because this is an absolutely ridiculous bow skill. And I'm talking like lightning arrow, tornado shot kind of ridiculous. I'll quickly show you and describe to you why I actually went for this in here. First off, I want to say that Caustic Arrow is still totally fine. I went with Caustic Arrow forever. I was super happy with it. It's just this has the sort of clear where it doesn't really feel like a leak shorter anymore. It's not that Caustic Arrow is bad, it's just that this is a lot more fun, and I will give you the direct comparison in a second. But just to make you understand what the skill does. So normal Scourge Arrow has channel stages. So you have to channel it and then release it, and you get an amount of pots for each stage that you have. To showcase this here is Scourge Arrow. You channel it up to 5 and then this happens, right? Fair enough, right? For Totem, it is basically unplayable because they always charge to full, which for clear absolutely sucks. Now, Scourge Arrow of Menace, however, loses that channeling. So it loses a little bit of the full damage potential. But what it does is it doesn't just get 5 spore pods. It gets 1 spore pod per projectile fired. So with 7 arrows right now, we're not even close to getting to its full potential. However, just to put the ballista out here right now, you can just spam these basically. And what happens is you just have a screen full of projectiles. Now to showcase you this, I will quickly show you an arid lake right here. I actually need to remove this right here. Don't worry. We'll go over all the updates in a second. Just a tiny bit tired right now. Loading screens have been absolutely abysmal this league. I just want to point out. Okay, so we go in and we have our totem playstyle, and this is what happens. Projectiles are everywhere. Everything dies. Now, Caustic Arrow has a lot more focused arrows, right? Which you will notice when you're up against rares. Against rares, Caustic Arrow, still better. Against bosses, still slightly better. Against bosses, the nice thing is that your arrows, your totems are actually aligning the pods pretty well because there's no other mobs to distract you. But in a pack with a rare mob and some other mobs, sometimes what happens is it will actually just like fire in dumb directions. But as you can see right here, once it has lined up and it doesn't move around, it's totally fine. So this is what happens. Right now, I basically have no gear. I have none of the uniques we talked about right now. It's basically only what we got. So once again, if you want to stay Caustic Arrow, totally fine. I would recommend you to try this out. If the playstyle is for you, I would probably swap over. The gem has been going up by quite a bit since we streamed. Also, a lot of other people have been experimenting with it, so definitely look out for that. The chance to get it from lab is about the same as the other Caustic Arrow. Just so you know, if you're leveling new, you do not have to get either Scourge Arrow of Menace or Caustic Arrow of Poison. You can just strictly level with a normal Caustic Arrow. However, do not under any circumstances level with the normal Scourge Arrow. It is absolutely abysmal. So what changes for the build with Scourge Arrow? So as I said, it does a little bit less damage than Caustic Arrow. The 20% is kind of out of thin air. I haven't really tried it for a while, but it did feel like a little bit less. It has insane clear to make up for that, which especially at the start when you're farming, we're doing Expedition and Legion right now. That is absolutely huge. It scales way better with extra projectiles simply because whenever you fire it, under every single arrow, there is going to be a pod. And with 5 stages, back then with Helm Enchant, you could do a maximum of 6. And we're only at 7. We don't have +2 from our bow. We don't have +1 from our quiver. We don't have a Rain of Splinters. And whereas Caustic Arrow kind of stops scaling at around about 7, 8, 9, this skill does not. Obviously, also Dying Sun if you really want to. But yeah, normal Scourge Arrow is really bad. Do not use it. Caustic Arrow, normal one, totally fine. Yeah, so stick with normal Caustic Arrow or Caustic Arrow of Poison if you have it. However, if you can't afford it, right now it's like 8 chaos. So if that's too much for you or it doesn't go down, then sure. The quality on the Scourge Arrow is also very big because it gives you an extra thorn pod. Now, if you don't know, these pods basically shoot thorn arrows, 5 of them each. And it's kind of like a secondary projectile for tornado shot. That's how you can think about it. So getting +1 gives you way better overlap potential and obviously better clear as well. Other than that, there is no need for pierce or chain or anything like that because Scourge Arrow actually pierces all targets. Now, I was under the impression that only the initial arrows pierce, But apparently that was not true. Also, the thorn arrows pierce. I don't know if that was changed. I looked it up on the internet and literally everybody split on it. But I tested it out and right now it actually pierces through everything. So no need to take any notes. In terms of links, there was also a change. And the first one is we go from greater volley to greater multiple projectiles. And that is simply because the pod alignment is just better. So if we look at greater volley right here and we fire that with the Scourge arrow, you will see that the pod alignment, actually, let me do this real quick. The pod alignment is not as good. It's kind of like along a line. Whereas with GMP, it is a lot more clustered. So against single targets, a lot better. And the second change we made is returning projectiles, which can get really hard in terms of FPS, as you can see right here. This with like 6 ballistas and a ton of projectiles will get pretty rough. If you're having problems with FPS or anything like that, you can replace returning projectiles for deadly ailments and you're still going to be totally fine. Now, what changes on the passive tree? So basically what we have to accommodate here is the Caustic Arrow of Poison has 40% chance to poison. We don't have that on the Scourge Arrow of Menace. There's no chance to poison here. So we need to compensate. We could go Herald of Agony, but then my reservation would be completely screwed up. So what we do instead is we pick these 2 nodes right here for 20% chance to poison. And then, since we don't have Herald of Agony, we need to get 2 more. So these claw nodes right here are actually global chance to poison on attacks. It is not just claws. The attack speed, we don't care about. So basically 10% chance to poison, 10% chance to poison. And then this 1 point, the 10% dot multi is actually also global for poison. Getting 10% dot multi for a point is very premium. So in case you're wondering why that is, that's why. And then you can also remove the area of effect bow mastery. You can get it later again if you want to, because it does work for the poison prolif in terms of AoE. And it does also work for the Azenov if you have that one later for the explosions, because it's global AoE. But right now, we just don't need it. Now, in terms of bow, if you're already in maps and you do expedition, you can do it with Rog. Rog is actually incredible for getting LE bows. Otherwise, what you can do is just search one on trade. I actually got mine for, I think, 3 chaos. This one right here is nothing to write home about, but it basically lasted me until red maps. Now, the way you do this is you actually go to damage per second, and that's because you're going to have a tincture right here. I'm going to talk about that in a second, because tinctures seem incredibly easy to get, and they're also incredibly cheap. If you look right here, right now, there is a ton of poisonberry tinctures out there. Even if you can't get them, they cost only like 1 chaos. A question I've got a lot that I've already answered, but I'll say it again. All damage can poison. Doesn't mean that you don't need chance to poison. It just means can. It doesn't mean you always poison. But in terms of getting the bow, once again, everything poisons. Chaos, physical poisons anyways, and then the elemental also poisons. So you want to go for damage per second. For example, you put in 700 here. It's not just elemental DPS or physical DPS. Then you go here and you go for bow category. All right, let's see what a bow with 700 DPS costs. This is roundabout as good as the bow that I have right now. 700 DPS. I think mine is like 720 or something. 741. This one for 4 chaos is better than mine. So yeah, it's pretty damn easy. Now, if it has an attack speed roll, the higher the attack speed here is, the better the bow. So if one bow, for example, has 700 DPS, but it has higher attack speed than another one with 700 DPS, that means it's better because it scales your other sources of flat added damage better. And you can also look out for the occasional dot multi, which is actually also really, really strong. And it might be cheap because the lightning arrow boys don't really need it. But let's talk about the Wildwood Ascendancy here for a second. There have been a lot of questions about this tincture. So you cannot equip this tincture until you have this point right here. I would highly recommend to take Oath of the Magi first, but if you want to, you can also take Coated Blade first if you want to just go for Poison Berry immediately. Depends on what kind of bows you drop. So Oath of the Magi is absolutely insane. Right now, I have no sockets on my helmet and no sockets on my boots. I get 50 all res and 30% movement speed for that. Will I use it in endgame? I'm not sure, but right now, it's really strong. As for Coated Blade, you get this one from the NPC that you find if you follow the yellow wisps. As you can see right here, this gives you increased quantity of vivid wisps. So I cannot really show you right now because I don't really know what to do myself, but all I know is I just kept following the yellow wisps, and at some point, I just found the character. And then also something I figured out that's even more important is you can actually share this with people. If one of your buddies gets one, or if you find somebody online, we had this on stream, like people were literally sharing them, has one of them, they can invite you, you TP to them, and you get the NPC. So that's how you get your first point. And after you get your first point, you basically get a quest on the side where it says you have to kill a lot of monsters. I would definitely start this in the campaign because the mobs in the campaign are pretty forgiving. However, once you hit maps, those get really damn rough. Which on the side, if you're in maps and you're like, wow, these one-shot me, X build sucks, just know everybody's dying to them right now. Reddit is literally on fire. And that's not just about the mobs you see down below, but also the one that get buffed once you go up. But yeah, either way, those are very, very important. Next up, I would take Nature's Concoction. And after that, I don't really know. We'll have to see. One important thing to note here is people have been asking how you activate them. So it is a little bit confusing. It's not like a consumable. It's literally a flask. Like a flask. So you put it in one of your flask slots, you activate it, and then it's toggled on. You never have to press it again. One important thing that you should do is rebind this to something that you're not going to accidentally press, like a flask, because otherwise it might be that you turn it off and now all of a sudden all your poison damage is gone. Now, one more thing that the Magi does with its Oath of the Magi node is it incentivizes you to not use some of your sockets. So what I actually did is, while leveling, I did not even use my self-cast setup. I was only ballistas from the get-go because that was the only way I could actually maintain the 50 all res from not wearing any gems in here, and the 30% movement speed for not having any gems in the boots. Another thing that I did not realize, by the way, because I didn't understand how easy it is to get the Poisonberry Tincture. Once again, buy it for 1 chaos on trade if you don't find it. It literally doesn't matter. Prison Weave is completely ridiculous early. If you get a Prison Weave, which also costs like an alch to a chaos right now, your leveling is literally over. I mean, you might as well have been teleported into maps right now. It's increased damage and it gives you a ton of flat damage at a point where you don't have any. Then another leveling change that I made was actually that I went for Shadow area initially. I spec'd out of it for the Cluster Jewel, as I said. But what I did while leveling is I actually went Shadow after I went down here. And the reason is that I've kind of seen that the totems start dying a little bit earlier, especially in the lead mechanic. It's kind of annoying. So I just want to have that Ironwood up early. And talking about Ironwood, I want to talk about totem res. So I don't have this right now, but this is something I'm going to go for. You really want your totems to be res capped, and they start with 40 res. Then you give them 30, so they're on 70, but you want to get them to 75. So you can have a jewel with 1 suffix that has totem LE res. I don't have it right now, but it is a suffix that you can get, and it's pretty cheap, so why not? And this kind of all worked out because I didn't have a self-cast setup, and because all my damage was in the ballistas from the get-go, so going down here didn't punish me at all. As for your cluster setup, just quickly, in terms of how you craft a large cluster jewel. So Chaos large cluster jewels are a little bit weird. All your best mods are low-level mods, which means you actually don't want a high-level cluster jewel. If you want to craft these, what you want is a item level 50 to 67 large cluster with chaos damage, and then you want to spam aberrant fossils. Those will give you more chance for chaos mods, and as you can see right here, all chaos mods. This is not the perfect jewel. The perfect jewel would have Unholy Grace in front, so I don't have to take these 2 points in the back at all, but it's still as good as it gets for now, and it is quite cheap to make. However, you have to have the right item level, because if you, for example, would take a item level 68 or higher jewel, it's way more likely that you get one of the shitty mods, and then it's gonna take you way more currency to craft. And as for the totem one, I have a completely scuffed one right now. All I want is Sleepless Sentries right here. Sleepless Sentries plus the Onslaught effect makes me a lot faster, gives me this evasion buff, not just on kill, but also just always. And yeah, I just don't take the second node if I don't get a second notable. All you have to do here is alt spam. It's like a 1 in 50. Alterations are free. So yeah, basically just get one of these. I don't think they're very expensive right now. I even found one myself. Other than that, I already talked about the bow. My helmet is very bare bones. I basically am just waiting for Wilmas. Right now, I actually already bought a Wilmas, but I don't have the gear to cap my res. So right now what I'm waiting for is that I'm 100% uptime on my flask, so I can get a res flask, and then I can replace this helmet for Wilmas. Also, a thing I want to talk about is Warm Timepiece. Not something I'm 100% sure on if I'm going to use yet, but it is quite nice once you have a Wilmas. Before that, don't use it. But after that, you can think about it. The 10% reduced skill effect duration is a slight downside, but it's not the end of the world. You have such good Wither sustain that it isn't that big of a deal. It's a little bit of a downside for your steel skin, but whatever. You get a ton of attack and cast speed because obviously the cast speed also counts for attack speed. However, I would not recommend this for endgame. This is just a stepping stone if you feel like your totems aren't fast enough or you don't have enough damage. Later, you definitely want something with life and dot multi, which I don't have right now. Life, dot multi, and maybe some other stats, like for example, fix your strength or fix your chaos res. In end game, you will want a simplex amulet, but that's for another video. As for our main setup, I bought the 6 link here for 80 chaos, and then I just rolled it myself with strength essences, actually. I'm very, very strength starved, so I just bought some of these shrieking essences of rages for 1 C each, and I just spammed until I got decent life and, I don't know, 1 res. One thing though, you don't necessarily need life. If you get no life at all and just evasion and stuff, that's actually almost better, because then you can go for the life mastery right here. That gives you 15% maximum life if there are no life modifiers. So just keep that in mind when you roll. No life doesn't mean it's automatically bricked. Then the boots. So I had to buy these for 30 chaos. The best case scenario would be if you randomly roll spell suppress on your body armor, because the range starts at like, I think 13 or something and goes up even over 20, which I think is very high level, but you can get like 15, 16 if you get semi-lucky, and then you don't have to buy them on the boots, and they are quite a bit more expensive on the boots. I would definitely recommend go for 25% movement speed, because those are so much cheaper than the 30% movement speed. If I had to buy these boots, but with 30 movement speed, I would have probably paid like ×6 or ×7, like in the divine range. And that's just crazy to pay for 5 extra movement speed. So that's just a small tip from me. As for implicits, don't destroy your currency just to get action speed. Action speed is nice for throwing your totems down, but at the end of the day, your totems do not actually get that action speed. They don't count for that. They don't get more attack speed. It's just the placement is faster and your movement speed is faster. So don't break your bank for that. If you hit movement speed, leave it for now. Faster poison or anything else, the other one doesn't really matter. As for belt, I got the most scuffed. Actually, I should definitely bless that strength. I just realized the most scuffed flask belt of all time. Just reduce flash as used, flask effect duration, and just I haven't even bothered to update the LE damage with attacks. This one is definitely on the chopping block soon. These gloves, attack speed, life, a little bit of res. Once I have my res flask set up, it's not going to be necessary. When you're looking for rings, there is a reason I put amethyst rings into the PoB, because they are just very, very strong, and I should also bless them. Just, I noticed right now. You want life, you want res, but mostly chaos res, because that is the only thing you're not getting. You are getting so much res from your flask. Right now I have the LE res on the Jade flask. You're getting so much res from your Magi that what's basically left that is premium is chaos resistance. Also, once again, the attack speed here is actually very important. All the flat added damage, super important for your bow, because they can all poison. And then another thing, I guess, on your quiver, if you're Caustic Arrow, projectile speed is completely useless, but if you already went for Scourge Arrow, it is very nice. It's kind of like a similar situation as with Tornado Shot, where it will actually increase your coverage. Other than that, Dot multi is the most important role here, followed by life, followed by some random flat damage. Oh yeah, one thing I forgot about the amulet, by the way. The amulet, Dot multi, absolute premium, followed by life once again. I don't even have a strength base, which is a big deal. This build is very, very strength hungry. Now, one thing I don't think I mentioned in the video is, so I took Druidic Rite, but that doesn't mean that you can't take Primal Spirit for now. It is a little bit worse in terms of flask sustain, but that really only matters endgame, and this one gives you 20 strength and 20 int, so you don't have to respec out of it if you don't want to. But back to the ME. I think I forgot to mention this absolutely super cheap anoint in the video, Deadly Draw. It is incredible. This costs almost nothing. Right now, Crimson Oils go for 2 chaos, and the other 2 you find within like 1 or 2 blight. They are super, super cheap. And that is 30% increased damage and 10% faster. Absolutely insane. Obviously, you don't want the Whispers of Doom for now. You only want the Whispers of Doom once you actually have a good amulet, because it costs triple golden oil, which right now comes out to like 1.5 divines. Now at the end here, for my Atlas progression, I basically went for a very straightforward wandering path version of the tree first to progress my Atlas. There's a lot of videos out there. I'll link one down below. But in general, what I wanted to do afterwards, once I went Scourge Arrow, is I wanted to go Expedition, because it is so smooth at Expedition. Even without Asenath, it clears it so well. You can go Extreme Archaeology easily. And sure, there are 2 remnants that are going to brick you. The first one is immune to chaos, and the second one is immune to poison. If you hit those, you just move on. You don't have to like look around. But if you don't hit those, it is beautiful. Oh yeah, and one more thing about the expedition right here. There is a really cute tech node for them, which is monsters cannot block your attacks. As you know, there is a weird remnant that gives them 50% chance to block your attacks, which can completely debilitate your damage. If you just take this one node and you're doing expeditions, it is incredible. Thank me later. And then the second one is Legion. Now, right now, I will say I don't have enough damage for Legion. My gear is way too scuffed. I just went for progression. I didn't even think about my gear, which I now have to kind of redo again. So I don't have the damage right now for the rares. However, it is very juicy. All those incubators early are very strong. Now, I wouldn't really recommend this tree right now. Just no expedition, Legion. I'll definitely make a video on it. Eventually, all you have to focus on early is get a lot of these chains for connected maps to drop, chains for drops to be 1 tier higher, go wandering path, right? Fill out your atlas. Right now, I think I have, 96 out of 115. The rest I will probably fill out over time. I haven't gotten my watchstones yet, but I've done the mini bosses. They were incredibly easy. I have already transitioned to Corrupted Blood. Very important to note about Corrupted Blood. I already said it in the video. I'll say it again. Only go Corrupted Blood after you have Master Surgeon and a good flask. And a good flask means increased amount recovered and reduced recovery rate in the prefix. Obviously, Corrupted Blood in the suffix would be optimal, but I obviously thought a little bit about that. Until you have that, Steel Skin will cover you there as well. It's not perfect solution, but it still gives you a little bit of something against bleed. As for Pantheons, don't forget to get your chance to avoid being frozen as soon as possible. If you happen to get this on your boots, if you have, for example, this, but instead of the evasion, you have a life roll, and then you have an open prefix, you can craft on chance to avoid being frozen. What you can do then is actually go Solo Vulnaris, which one of them gives you avoid projectiles that have chained, which is very nice because projectiles, I don't know if you noticed, they will chain off of your totems onto you. It is quite annoying, especially in something like a toll breach. So just know that for the future. And then Soul of Raslafa is kind of like the baseline. However, if you're doing Searing Exarch, you're going to get eaten alive if you don't get the unaffected by Burning Ground. You need that ASAP. But yeah, that's basically my day one. It was awesome over on twitch.tv/Palsteron. If you guys want to join in on the fun, come next day or something. In general, I have completely scuffed gear. I know I can't show you like an endgame version right now. I will eventually. I will maybe make a PoB as well on stream. But in general, this is what I have so far. And I think a lot of people are kind of in this phase right now where you just have kind of scuffed gear and you try and throw it together. But with that said, I hope you guys had a good league start. Definitely try out the Scourge Arrow of Menace once you have the chance to. Once again, Caustic Arrow, completely fine. I had a blast. A lot of people were coming to stream. We're kind of like, did you abandon Caustic Arrow? Is Caustic Arrow not good anymore? Guys, just because I don't play it doesn't mean it's not good. It's just that I absolutely love this skill. And I want to try out new skills, obviously. So yeah, Caustic Arrow, still baseline. Really, really fun. But I would definitely try and get your hands on this eventually. Right now, it's kind of hype. But with how easy it is to get those gems, especially in Uberlab, if you don't know, there is crafts where you can actually target those gems. It's not random. So I'm going to assume those prices are going to drop over time. But who knows? But yeah, I hope you had a good league start. And yeah, I will update you either day 2 or day 3. Maybe I'll put it together. If I have something to say, I'll say it. And with that being said, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.